Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Battlefield Project podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Rhoda, and we are the podcast for people who understand that life is a battle and only the strong will thrive. I'm joined by my friend Tracy here, who I'm going to introduce in a moment. But before I do that, let me get rid of the boring stuff here at the beginning. If you're listening to this show and you get any value out of it, or if you hear this show and the message that's going to be shared and you think, hey, my brother, sister, cousin, someone that you know and love would benefit from this message that's going to be shared, please share the show with them. I started this podcast with one simple purpose, which is to inspire all of you out there to let everyone know that no one goes through life untouched. Every single human being walking this earth is faced with battles in their life. And the difference between people who thrive and then people who kind of suffer their way through life, the people thriving are the ones who embrace those battles and they fight their way through those battles and they come out stronger on the other side. So I'm very fortunate to be blessed with a lot of friends who are willing to come on this show and share some of those battles with you. So, like I said, if you get any value out of this, please share it with somebody who needs to hear these messages, because the goal is just to make a major positive ripple effect in the universe by letting everyone know that we can all fight our way through the battles that we face. All right, so I got my friend Tracy here, who is a passionate entrepreneur who has made it her mission to educate women and teens to take ownership over their lives in safety and self-protection. She's a self-defense consultant, an independent pro mentor, and runs her Warrior Up business. She's just a badass. So I'm super excited to have you here, Tracy. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
My sincere pleasure. So yeah, as mentioned before we hit that record button, whatever battle that you face that you're comfortable sharing with people, the floor is yours, and I'm excited to hear about it.
My name is Tracy Reed. I live in Fort Worth, Texas. I was born and raised in Midland, Odessa, Texas. And I moved there shortly after to Cleburne, Texas, went to high school there and graduated, and then moved to Fort Worth. And that's been my hometown ever since.
Cool.
So, yeah, Matthew, you were talking about, personal or business, ups and downs. I don't really have any. I probably just explained to you a little bit ago, in my day job, issues that I had trying to, come into a new job. But actually, I feel like for me, I have more of a personal story that I like to share with others that has truly impacted me. That I really just now came into at the age of 59. I just now came into, really sharing that story to help other women. And that story started, just a little bit of my history is my mom was a single mom of 6 kids. My dad left her after the sixth one was born for the woman. And my mother was a single mom trying to make it on her own, and I really didn't have a lot of help from my dad. My dad moved off to another city 4 or 5 hours away, but my dad's brother helped my mother. And my mother ended up marrying my dad's brother.
Okay.
And 1 year into the marriage, I caught my stepdad uncle molesting my little sister at the age of 7. She was 6 years old. I was 7. And I made the decision to tell my mother the next morning. And honestly, I was a little bit of afraid to do that because I thought, the stigma is that you don't tell anybody. That's kind of how it was back in the day. You never told anybody. And I just made the decision to tell my mother, and I kind of thought my mother would side with my stepdad, simply for the fact, she's a single mom with 6 kids. Of course, she needed help. But she called my dad and told my dad what happened, and my dad told her, well, you need to stay anyway because he will help you with the kids.
Sure.
My mom was devastated. And the next day, my mom went and picked up a U-Haul truck loaded all of our stuff up. What little stuff we had, we didn't take much. There were 6 kids. Loaded it up in a truck, U-Haul truck. Loaded up the station wagon, the old good old blue
Yep.
station wagon with the wood down the side. Loaded all 6 of the kids and headed to Cleburne within 3 days of my stepdad molesting my little sister, and we never looked back.
Yeah.
And my mom filed for divorce, and really for me that was probably the most profound thing that I remember. I have since learned a lot of stuff that's happened to me before that, but that one incident propelled me to a life of horrible mistakes that I made that I'm just now really starting to understand and heal from. And got to Cleburne, settled in, 6 brothers and sisters, 1 mom in a little 2-bedroom house. My mother worked all her life, and my older brother and my older sister raised me. So I had 6 brothers and sisters. So I was the youngest, not the youngest, but the second to the youngest. And then all the others were up of older than me. But my older brother and my older sister basically raised me and all my other brothers and sisters because my mom had to work. And so at an early age, at 16, I was looking for love in all the wrong places because I didn't have a father figure.
Yep.
And I began dating older men. I was 16 years old dating a 30-year-old man against my mom's wishes, but I was rebellious, and
Yep.
kind of did what I want. And then actually, my mom moved away and wanted to go to Oklahoma and be closer to her sister, and all of my other brothers and sisters had already married and were out of the house. Most of them married at a young age. Back then, it was kind of the thing to
Yep.
do.
Yep.
And my mother told me, she said, you either go to Oklahoma with me or you stay here with your older brother. And I wasn't willing to do that. My brother was, I don't like to share much of this because, I don't know who all hears this kind of stuff, but my older brother wasn't in a good place because my dad was a very abusive dad. And, he had his own problems. At the age of 14, he began drinking alcohol and just fell into a pattern that I didn't want to live in. Unbeknown, I had my own problems. I didn't think I did, but
Yep.
he had his, and I didn't want to live that way. So I moved out on my own. I had my own house at 16 years old.
Wow.
Worked as a manager at Kmart as a sporting goods manager, and went to high school, graduated, and then took a job at Comanche Peak Power Plant, which is in Glen Rose, Texas. Nuclear power plant. Went to work for Brown and Root, and man, I was making good money. At a young age, at 18 years old, I was making great money, which I thought back then it was great money. Again, going right back into that same old thing, same pattern. I started dating, older men. I basically kind of just fallen men after men after men, looking for something that I never had, growing up, which started a pattern that I didn't know then, but I know now. I understand. Got married at, gosh, 24. Thought I was marrying the man of my dreams, and never dreamed that this would happen. But I met this guy, dated for 6 months, never had any problems with the guy, and married him. And then the night before we got married, he hit me.
Yeah.
Like really bad. I didn't want to get married, but I was afraid. My parents had already paid. My dad was in and out of my life. It wasn't like we didn't see him, but he was in El Paso. We only saw him in the summer times. But my dad paid for the marriage, and my mom paid for the marriage, and I didn't want to back out because I didn't want to tell my parents and then, them pay that kind of money. So I went ahead and married him. And then next day, it all went downhill from there. And the abuse became toxic, so toxic to the point, I had a broken nose, broken thumb, black eyes, And then within 6 months, I had decided that, I was either going to die in my marriage or I was going to die leaving. And I chose to leave and run away from my marriage. Um, the day I woke up and I had a steak on my face was the day that I chose to leave.
Yeah.
And man, that was the start of a downhill spiral for me.
Before you go into what that spiral looked like, I want to commend you for, I think you were 7, you said 6, your sister was 6, you were 7, I believe, for
Yeah,
having the courage to speak up on behalf of your sister, because you probably in some way or another saved her life, because if you saw it happening, may or may not have been the first time, probably wouldn't have been the last time. So like it was your courage and your strength that probably kept her from who knows how long, but a life of like a lot of pain and misery, and like pulled her out of that. And then kudos, and commend your mom as well for, especially after your dad gave the terrible advice of like stick with them because you need the help. Like that's like that pains me to hear that, because I'm like, he shouldn't have, like I'm a very like rigid family man. Like I would never want to leave my family. I could never imagine leave my family, but like you did that, but then you tell your ex-wife to stay with your brother who's now like doing stuff to her kid. Like I can't fathom like giving
yeah,
that advice. So for your mom to hear that and be like, like probably would be easier to stick with them because like I need the help, but like that's not what my kids need. So I'm gonna do what I know my is best for my kids. Like that's the true definition of parenthood, in my opinion. So I don't know your mom, but your mom is a true warrior and like deserves to be given that credit, because not an easy decision, but definitely the right decision to be made. Um, so yeah, I hearing you share that, I'm just like, go on with the downward spiral, because I could go on for a little bit here about like how much I respect, without even knowing your mother, respect her, but I feel like I've expressed that.
thank you so much. Yeah, she was my rock.
Yeah,
And even though she wasn't a parent in the home, because she worked,
yeah,
2 jobs trying to make a living. She never ever remarried, but she was like a rock, and oh my gosh, having her to go to for every single thing is, she was there. She was everything to us. But what the hard part was is that I held so much. I hated my stepdad, but I never saw him again. But I had to
mhm,
see my dad. And the hatred I had for my dad lived on basically until actually just 20 years ago.
mhm,
Um, I don't know if my dad had a hardened heart for what he did, and that, he just couldn't ever bring himself to, speak to us about it or apologize for what he did. I don't know, but what I know now, just through my healing process, I forgive my dad for that. Um, because my dad had probably had a rough life. My dad did not know how to love. He
mhm,
was not,
yeah,
he couldn't show love. And again, I'm going to go back just through my healing journey that I've been on this last year and 14 months. Well, a year, well, 14 months total. It's hard to say, what people do. My dad was probably abused and,
mhm,
didn't have a good life, and so I forgive my dad for that, but I never got the chance to tell him
yeah,
ever. I always wanted a relationship with my dad. In fact, all my life, that's all I did. I felt like I went in and seeked other men because I was looking for validation that I never got from my dad. Because
yeah,
even still, up to 20 years ago, well, I take that back, up to 13 years ago, my dad passed 13 years ago. My mom passed 20 years ago. Even up to 13 years ago, I still was seeking validation from my dad, trying to get my dad to love me the way I wanted my dad to love me.
yeah,
But now, now that I'm in the healing, my dad loved me the only way that he knew how.
mhm,
Um, and that it's hard to accept that in some ways because I still wanted to confront my dad, never could, but now um, I'm dealing with the pain, but I'm healing too, knowing that, my dad what did the only thing that he thought he needed to do at the time, and it's all I can do because I can't live in the past. I can't
Yeah.
go back there. He's not here any longer. And so healing my own self was the only way out.
Yeah, hearing you say that about your dad, I'm gonna screw the phrase up, but it's something along the lines of like be kind to everybody you meet because like you just don't know what kind of like struggles that they have. And more often than not, I think most people, now there's like pure evil in the world, which this wouldn't be applicable to, but most people I feel like are doing the best that they can with what they have. And it's probably was the case for your dad, like, he wasn't gifted with the example of what real love is and like how to love and express love. So to hold him accountable to a certain standard that you wanted out of him when he never knew that and wasn't blessed with that upbringing, it's like it's an unfair expectation to put on someone because it's like he's probably
Yeah.
doing the best with what he had. And like it cosmically you feel like it's not good enough in many ways. It's not good enough, but like it's the best that he had. So like you can't hold that. You shouldn't, but you can. But then good for you for going through a healing process and realizing like holding on to that resentment or like bitterness towards him for something that he was probably still doing his best with as is.
Yeah.
It's not healthy for him. And more than anything, and like the ultimate point of that is it's not healthy for you. Like that doesn't change anything besides stir up negative energy in you that then's going to come to like come to other parts of your life, and you're going to bring that crap in as opposed to just being like, okay, it is what it is. Like he did the best with what he had. It wasn't what I wanted, but life doesn't always give us what we want. Sometimes it gives us what we need. What can I learn from it and now move on in a positive manner and use my life for good is really the ultimate key that you can unlock.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Matthew, man, uh, I, I, I'm fixing to be 60 years old. And, some days I'm like, why did I not do this? Why did I not know to do this sooner? And I guess that's God's timing because I'm like, man, I'm just now coming into, who I'm truly meant to be and healing all the trauma that, just that one little incident
Mm-hmm.
caused. I mean, my dad leaving my mother was a lot. I've since learned of some of the traumas that happened when my dad was there. Um, that I kind of had this fear. I had this block. I was like, did something, I don't remember much of my childhood, but I had this fear that, is there something missing that I was almost afraid to, I wanted to find out,
Yeah.
you know, because I was like, did it happen to me? Because I don't remember any of my childhood at all.
Yeah.
Anything up to the day that happened, I don't remember anything
Wow.
in the past. I mean,
Yeah.
before that, very little. Like I do remember little things like my dad would set us girls on the couch and he would force my three brothers to box, and he would force us girls to watch that.
Yeah.
Um, I remember my dad beating my oldest brother with a bull rope, and making him go outside, to clean paint off of a truck, in his underwear in the and ice cold weather. Those are some things that I remember. I don't remember anything else, and I kind of kept wondering, am I blocking out something that's happened because I don't even remember
Yeah.
my childhood. So I started wanting to go onto that journey, and I kept, you know, the fact that I started seeing some of the patterns, in some of those trauma things that started happening to me, and I started seeing the patterns continue to just come over and over. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I got married and I ran from that marriage, and then shortly after, married another man, which is my son's uh, dad,
Mm-hmm.
uh, probably on the rebound because I was again looking for that validation, and met some guy on the beach, fell in love, got
Yeah.
married. Actually, I got pregnant and then we got married because I felt like that's what I needed to do for my son. And then shortly into that marriage, same thing. no abuse whatsoever, but I felt like I recognize now I became a runner.
Mm-hmm.
I was running from the trauma. I was running from things, searching, and I just kept running. Everything, it was like I wasn't getting what I needed. And so I ran from that one. I got the divorce, and ran to another, not another marriage, I just
Yeah.
another relationship. And then that one didn't. And then and the big joke was that my name became Tracy Timmons Brown Smith Jones Montgomery because, I was just considered a
Yeah.
runner,
Yeah.
which was embarrassing at the time. But now I look back, and I realize, um, I was looking for something that I never got as a child, and I never knew what it was like to have somebody to love me.
Yeah.
And so I just kept searching, oh, this is going to be the one, and then I got into it, and no, they weren't giving me what I needed. So I just kept running to the next one
Yeah.
until I met my husband that I'm married to now, which I'm married 20 years. And it hasn't been without some hardships. I mean, I came into the marriage, we met on match.com and then married 2 months later, we went backwards. We didn't even know each other and we got married.
Yeah.
But my mom had passed away. Let me back up. My mother went into an outpatient procedure with they were gonna just remove her gallbladder. And I had just met my husband, and I had no intentions of getting married, nothing. I was like, I don't even want to date this guy. This guy's been hounding me to go out with him. And then my mom went into the hospital for outpatient procedure, and my now husband, we were just kind of starting to go out on dates. Probably hadn't even known each other 2 weeks maybe. And he just happened to meet my mother in the hospital. I was there. He drove down to Waco to pick up my son.
Mm.
And I brought him up there because it was an emergency. They called us in and said, hey, we had some issues with your mom. We couldn't do the procedure. We need all your family to come in. And so he went and got my son. I went back to the hospital, and they called us in and said, your mom has stage 4 cancer and not expected to live.
Oh.
6 to 9 months, which I was devastated because my mom was my rock all my life. And here I had this guy that I didn't even know, he
Mm-hmm.
went to pick up my son, and then he met my mom in the hospital. And then, um, you know, it was the craziest thing. She left and went home, and then they said, hey, put her on hospice. And um, he was down there literally every single day to help my mother. I mean, he took my mom, food. He took my mom flowers. He went down there and helped my mom, get my mom's deal, because I mean, it went so fast. She needed a wheelchair ramp. He put in a wheelchair ramp, and I'm like, who is this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, wow, I've never had a guy that did that kind of thing before.
Yeah.
This is just, he's not who I would date, but I was like, this is different.
Yeah.
And he asked my mom if he could marry me. And she's like, well, yeah, and he asked me to marry him. I think I was at a vulnerable point in my life because I was like, oh my God, I was emotional about my mom. And then I was seeing a guy that was just taking care of my mom like he would take care of his own mother.
Yeah.
And so then 2 months later, we got married, and then my mom died 2 weeks later. And whoo, that was a whirlwind, I'll tell you, because I didn't even know him, and I married him 2 months later. And then it was like, oh my God, I went right back into that fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And was trying to, just learn something new. And I was in that flight of trying to rescue myself out of something that I got into, and was a runner with my husband now. Well, thank God, the guy's a saint, because he has stuck by me through thick and thin, and has watched me have some trauma. And it hasn't been that bad. We didn't have bad relationships. I was
Yeah.
just mentally, I was just jacked up,
Yeah.
and kept running. And, I left him, for 9 months. We never got a divorce, but I left him, ran. I'm right back to that running stage, came back and we fought it out and fought it out. And we've stuck beside each other. He's stuck through it, with me all these years. And it wasn't until last year, February 17th, January 30th of last year, 2022, Austin, my son. I don't know if you know Austin or not. Do you, Austin Montgomery?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, he's in Apex.
Okay.
And, he challenged me to join Apex. He never told me why.
Yeah.
I mean, no son's gonna say, "Mom, I think you're jacked up. You need help."
Yeah.
He had the heart enough to probably tell me that, "Mom, I think you're messed up. You really need help." I mean, I've struggled all my life trying to go get help. I've gone through doctor after doctor after doctor, therapy, prescription, depression meds, nothing worked. And
Yeah.
it wasn't like I was on a just down cycle. I was just, messed up mentally. And it wasn't until I got into Apex, he joined me. He's like, "Mom, I'm challenging you to join Apex." And I was like, I usually don't turn a challenge down. And so I joined. And man, it was shortly after that I joined Apex. I was like, wow, I started meeting all these people and learning about their journeys. And man, I was just freaking out because I was like, I'm not the only one that's crazy.
Yep.
Every single person, it seems like,
Has
I
their
bet,
garbage. Yep.
yes, has been through hell and back. I mean, is it Eric Rogers?
Rogers. Yep.
Oh my gosh, I've watched his journey, and then I was like, wow, I'm
Yep.
not so bad after all.
Yep.
And then shortly after, I remember getting on a podcast with Kevin Faulkner and Stacy Rasky. And Stacy was talking about her journey, and I was like, man, I think I'm going to go on a healing journey. And I asked her, I was like, hey, how long does it take to go on a healing journey? Oh, I look back now and I thought that's a dumb question because, once you're healing, I may be healing for the rest of my
I
life.
say it can be an infinite process.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she did. She's like, hey, you can't really put a time limit on it. Every single person is going to be different. Yours might be 6 months. It may be 1 month, depending on what all you've been through.
Yeah.
But it could be for the rest of your life. It could be, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. She said you cannot put a time limit on it. And so, man, I started digging in, and I went to a couple of healing sessions with Wiley MacArthur.
Yep.
And, I did some NLP with him. And then shortly after that, I just dove in, man, and have focused on my health. And I had decided that, until I get my mindset right, I can't do anything. And my mind was so jacked up from everything that has happened.
Yeah.
That I finally was at that point that, thank God that my son was had the courage to tell me, Mom, I think you need to join Apex. I challenge you.
Yep.
Because I truly, in my heart, I think that my son knew that this group could help me. And then without getting into this group, I don't know where I would be today. I probably would be dead because I was at that point. I was suicidal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just like you had the courage to step up for your sister when you were a little kid. How old's Austin?
He's 32 or
Okay.
34.
So he had the courage to step up for his mom and do the same thing, like throw a life vest out there. So
Yeah.
it doesn't surprise me. I mean, he is of your DNA, so like it makes sense that if you were that courageous, at a young age to do what you did, that you raised a son that now is that courageous to know when he needs to step in and extend a helping hand or a life vest to someone that he loves. So I'm not surprised to hear that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And you said something a couple minutes ago about, it was a very quick comment that you made about like sometimes you ask yourself like, why didn't I do this? Like, why didn't I go on this healing journey earlier? Like, what, why did I wait till 55 or 60 or whatever it is? Like, give yourself the same grace, which I'm sure you have already come to this conclusion, but like give yourself the same grace that you're giving your dad for doing the best that you can with what you have. Like you can't force the timing to be right. Like you mentioned divine timing. Like you can't force when the moment that God's plan for you is it's now your time to heal and to get your life on a really good track.
Yeah.
That's partly our responsibility, but I feel like it's less our responsibility and more the great creator, like, whoever guides our life and our future was his choice to be like, this is her time now to like really heal and take a new path in life. So I doubt you do, but like if you ever have the thought of like, why couldn't it's been her, like don't beat yourself up over it, because if it would have been at 50, maybe you would have healed for 3 years and then you would have spiraled back down for the rest of your life. And now that you started at 58 or 59 or whatever it is, the feeling that I get from talking to you and seeing you on social media is like, this is the future for you. Like, this is the path that you will be on now until you take your last breath on this earth, which is hopefully decades from now. But I feel like it happened at the right time for you, which is usually the case for people who are doing the work and want to do the work. Everything happens at the perfect time.
Yeah, I'm realizing that, I I see Krista Wagberg, she's a radiant healer, which, I've never done that kind of healing before, and I remember thinking when I met Wiley, and I had reached out to Caitlin Young, and because she had wrote her book and I read it, and she was telling me, she talked about going and doing that kind of healing. And in my heart, I was like, you know what? I have been on depression meds since I was 18 years old, and decided to get off of them 13 years ago, and my doctor wouldn't take me off of them. And uh, I knew then, I was like, there's something to be said for that, because
Yeah.
I was medicating. I mean, I only took one prescription meds, but I was medicating myself for something that they were never going to heal me of, and
Yeah.
I just kept going to therapist after therapist, trying to, telling them my story, well, of course they just want to hand you a pill.
Yeah.
And so when I heard about Wiley, I've never spent the kind of money that I did on myself as quick as I did that, because I was like, man, I think this is going to be it.
Yeah.
This is going to be the start of my new journey. And I called him. I said, I want to do this, and he's like, yeah, let's do it on Zoom. And I said, no. I said, I want to come out there. I want face to face with you. I cannot do Zoom, because I knew my body. I was like, man, I've been sitting with therapy,
Yeah.
therapists for 30 years.
Yeah.
I didn't want to sit on a Zoom call. He's like, well, you can come out here if you want, but he goes, I could do it on Zoom. And I said, no, I got to do it. I got to come out there.
Yeah.
Flew out there, and it was the weirdest thing, Matthew, or actually, I don't even think it was weird. To me, it was beautiful. I didn't even know this guy. I didn't even tell my husband I was going out there. I just said, I'm going for a meeting. Didn't know Wiley from a hole
Mhm.
in the wall, because I hadn't even been in Apex less than a month.
Yeah.
And flew out there, and I was like, oh, I never even had any reservation about letting him pick me up. I just
Yeah.
assumed I was going to go to a doctor's office.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm going to pick you up at the airport. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, great. He picks me up, and we're out in St. George, Utah. And we're like, and have you ever been out there?
I've driven through Utah.
Ah, I fell in love with that place. It is
Yeah. It is.
stunning.
Yep.
Yeah. And he took me he picked me up, and then we started riding around. I was like, oh my God, this guy's taking me out in the mountains. Where are we going?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is crazy. And he's like, look, I gotta drop you off for a minute, and then I'll come back and get you, because I need to go pick my son up and take you home. So he came back to get me, and then we took off up in the mountains. And I was like, oh my God. I go, I was like, I never really panicked, but I was like, I know God's got me covered.
Yeah.
I just felt that. I was like, because I know nobody would lead me astray in Apex.
Yeah.
we get off up into those mountains, and he gets out and he hands me a bottle of water, and he's like, "You ready?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've never hiked a day in my life."
Yeah.
I said, I go, "Where are we going?" We're going up there in the mountains. And I'm like, "Wally, I've never hiked. I don't
Yeah.
have any hiking shoes on." He goes, "Let's go." And I go, "You're going to need more than that bottle of water." I go, "You better bring a cane or something, because you're going to be carrying me." And we got up in the mountain, and it's the weirdest thing. I had this energy that just came over me, because I was hiking, and I was like, "Wow, I'm hiking. I've never hiked before, and I'm
Yep.
doing this, you know." And we get up on this area. Is so crazy, because up there in the mountains up there, they're not like Texas. I mean, Texas is rocks and
Yeah.
cactus, and we get up in there. I mean, I could have literally hiked barefooted, because there was no rock, cactus, nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
sand. It was stunning. And we get up on this ledge, and up under this kind of uh, it looked like a cave, a massive cave looking thing. And we sat down, and I look across. There's a mountain here and a mountain here. And I look across, and it looked like this huge white angel that had wings spread from mountain to mountain. And I go, "Oh, look, Wally, there's my mom watching over me."
Yeah.
And it was at that moment that I knew my mom was saying, "It's going to be okay.
Yep.
This is your time. You're
Yep.
going to heal." And I told Wally that. I said, "Wally," I go, "that's my mom looking over at me." I said, "I know I'm meant to be here." And that was the day that I was like, "Okay, this is my journey. This is my new journey. I'm going on a healing journey." And I've never stopped since. Um, and of course, I've got another healer that I go through, that Krista Wildberger. She's here locally in Dallas, and
Yeah.
I live here in Fort Worth, and I go see her. But my gosh, the journey that I've been on has been incredible. It's been intense,
Yep.
but it's been so worth it. You know, um, to say that I don't have any regrets at all. I look back and go, "Why didn't I do it sooner?" But I didn't know how. You
Yep.
know, if you don't know that kind of healing, I was just telling Krista this the other day. If you don't know that kind of healing, you don't. I mean, how do you go
And
get it?
say you're not at fault for not going after it if you don't know it exists.
Right, because
Yeah.
most everybody goes, "Oh, well, I'm just going to go to the doctor, or I'm going to go
Yep.
to, and then of course that's how, it's kind of, to me, it's the programming.
Yeah, it is. They
Oh,
hook you in. Yep.
that's what you were taught to do, is go to the doctor.
Yep.
And so you don't hear that. And so, whew, that has been, it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And I thank God every day for Wiley. I thank God for Krista Wadberg. Those guys pretty much have saved my life, because I don't know if I don't know if I would be here today if it wasn't for Austin getting me into
Yeah.
and getting me into the rooms that I needed to be in, to be around
Yeah.
people that could help me.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a perfect kind of like wrap it up in a nice bow and like tie a nice on a like a perfect ending, because we talk about that in Apex, and like, I'm part of another, like, other groups, and like I spend so much time pruning my circle of friends constantly, because it's the difference between like a good life and a bad life, in my opinion. Like, who you surround yourself, like, we're all individual beings, but we're meant to be connected to other beings. So who are you connecting with, and what are you giving and getting from each one of those people makes all the difference in the world. Like, if you're in a position in your life and you're like, "I don't like where I'm at," like, do inventory of who you surround yourself with, who you communicate with on a daily basis. And my
Yes,
guess is 8 out of 10 of those people are probably thinking the same thing. Like, "I really don't like my life." So you're just vibrating inside this circle of like, pain, misery, "I don't like my life," disappointment, and you're all just feeding off of each other. But then you pick yourself up and put yourself over here, and now all of a sudden you're talking to people and connecting with people who have goals and dreams and visions and good energy, and they want to see others succeed, and they're givers and they're servant leaders. And like, now all of a sudden you start to absorb that, you start to become that. It completely changes everything. Like, I don't think there's a more powerful I'll use the word hack in life because it's not that, but it is so simple, then to make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people. And it totally
Yeah,
changes the game for you. And it can happen like that. Like it takes one conversation, it takes one moment in the mountains being gifted with a vision because some random guy that you just met took you in a car up the mountain and told you you're hiking, even though you're like, I'm not fucking hiking. He's like, you're hiking. And like, now here you are sitting here and being gifted with this vision of an angel, and poof, your life changes. Like it all happens so quick. It can happen so quick.
it can. It kind of blows my mind, honestly,
Yeah.
because I'm like, wow, this is I'm living. I'm literally living something that I've been searching for 30 years to find.
Yep.
You know, it's the craziest thing because I had a breakfast with Austin at MDM, and I was telling him that just through my healing journey, I told him, I said, look, I said, he knows that I searched for that validation from my dad all
Yep.
his life, and all the time that we were together I was constantly looking for the validation and for love from my dad. And then that led into me doing the same thing with my marriage, as I was looking for validations from whoever I was with, and if I didn't get it I was moving on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
He's all I said, he's also experiencing that with his own dad,
Mm-hmm.
because I left his dad. Not that he never had a relationship with his dad, because when he was 12, he went to go live with his dad, but we had shared custody. And I had made the decision. I was like, he asked me, could he go live with his dad? And I said, yeah. I said, because I know what it did to me to not have a dad. I didn't want that to happen to Austin.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had 12 years of a mother's instinct and raising him, and then I
Yep.
let him go live with his dad at 12. I was like, I want him to have that because I don't want him to live without a dad.
Yeah.
I knew what it did to me. And so I was telling him at breakfast, I said, and I go, you're actually, looking for the same validation from your dad. And I said, what I've realized now, that when my dad's passed away, and I'm literally looking for the same validation that prior to me starting my healing,
Yep.
I was still looking for that validation, but I was looking for it from my son.
Yeah.
I was literally like, I want to hear my son tell me, I love you, mother. I want to hear from my son telling me, you did a great job, mother. But I was like continuing that pattern.
Yep.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And then when I started seeing Austin was doing the same thing with his dad, I was like, oh my God, that's generational
Now, so
curse.
you're passing that on. Yeah.
Yes. And I was like, I got to stop doing that. So, I had Lori Rain and Krista both told me, you have got to sit down and talk to Austin, because you're literally still trying to follow that same pattern, and
Yep.
you're doing that, and you've got to stop. You've got to heal that, and then come to find out, I mean, literally Austin's doing it, and then he's like, Mom, I'm fighting my own demons. I'm doing the same exact
Yeah.
thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I
Eh.
started realizing the generational
Yep.
trauma. I understood that before. I didn't really comprehend that until I
Yeah.
started into healing.
Yeah. The impact we have on others is incredible. And it takes a certain level of awareness to understand that and then to accept that and then to do something about it. And I feel like a large part of society doesn't have that awareness, so then doesn't do anything about it. And it's why you see generational curses passed down, because it's like grandpa treated mom this way and dad this way, and then mom and dad treated me this way. That's all I've ever known. So I'm going to treat my kids this way, and then they're going to have
Yeah.
kids. And it's just like generation after generation. And it's like someone's got to like either through their own work or I think I lost Tracy.
Oh my goodness.
I was boring you so much that you just disconnected from me.
Oh my goodness. My computer just shut down. Like all of a
No
sudden it
worries.
just said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Matthew."
Oh, you don't need to be sorry. It's all good. I figured you'd jump back on, and if not, we could edit it at the end and just been like, and that was a weird ending, but we're all good. It was a great message shared throughout. So, but yeah, I think that I love your story because even at the age of 55 or 60 or whatever, like you're taking control of your life, and then through that you're going to help your kids take control of their lives. So you're the catalyst for breaking that generational curse, and then your son and other kids, they'll break it even further, and you're putting your whole family lineage on a totally different trajectory, which is, I think, probably one of our greatest responsibilities on this earth, is to make sure that those behind us, we set a good example and give them a brighter future than we had.
Yes, that's something I never understood, and thank God for Krista. I mean, she has been teaching me so much, about that because I mean, it is not an easy
No.
feat to go through healing, that
Yep.
type of healing, and a lot the stigma, a lot of people think that, oh, that's not, that's crazy stuff that you're doing. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it's not.
No,
It
it's
is,
real.
it is to me, that is the only way you truly heal. You
Yep.
cannot heal going to a therapist, and you cannot heal taking prescription medications. It will never work because it's not. It,
Yep.
here is messed up because of something that's happened, the
Yep.
traumas and stuff that's happened in your life, and will never be healed by a piece of,
Yep.
synthetic drugs.
Yep. Tracy, thank you. This is gonna resonate with a lot of people, I think. The beginning of this story kind of was like a certain direction, and it shifted to like a self-healing journey, which I love, because I think if we would have just stuck with like kind of like the trauma from a young age and then running from relationships, like that's, I think people need to hear that, and like people would empathize with that and they would learn from that, and it would just help like raise their awareness in that regards. But ending it and kind of morphing the conversation into like the healing journey, I think is perfect, because I think that's what people need to know is, no matter how much pain you've experienced or hardship in your life as a kid and then through your, teens and 20s with relationship, it doesn't matter. And my guest before this one was Kevin Faulkner, and he was talking about how he was like, 52 or something before he like had his aha moment of like, I need to change. And it's interesting that, I got both of you on here today who, and you're not older, but like, you're not like 20 and 30 anymore. You had these moments a little bit later in life, in like middle age. I love that message, because there's too many people out there that are like, oh, I'm 40, I'm 45, I'm 50 or 60. Like, I'm too old to change. Like, it's not worth it. I can't do it. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like, listen to Kevin's story, listen to Tracy's story. Like, you can absolutely change at any
Yeah.
point when you take that control and you make that conscious decision.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, Matthew, because, now that I'm healing, I'm thinking I'm only 60 years old. I still got 30 years that I want to live.
Exactly. Yep.
That's a long time.
It sure is. Yep.
I still have 10 years to impact my child. I still have 10 years to impact my 8 grandbabies.
Yep.
And that, I used to think, oh, I'm getting too old, but no, you're never too old
Yeah.
to heal.
Yep.
I say, the change, yeah, it's tough. It is a tough battle, but you got to commit. You know how that G code is, and you know
Yep.
how, the healing journey is. I mean, if you can't stop doing it, and it's a game changer for sure. But man, it's tough. It's a tough job to commit to, and it's all in who, do you decide you want to commit? Do you really want to heal? And if
Yep.
you don't want to heal, then go live the misery that you've been living in.
Yeah. I was just gonna say it's tough, but the alternative is living a life of like, like I'm not really happy. I'm kind of miserable in life. Like, at literally the same message we just shared at the end of Kevin's episode. It's like, I'm gonna choose my tough. Like, I'm gonna choose the tough of like going through the growth and like figuring it out so I can live a good life after that transition period. That's tough, but I'm gonna go that route, because the alternative is to just stay where I'm at, where I'm not happy, and live another 20, 30 years of like
Misery.
not being happy. Like, that's, I told him, and I'll say it again, like that's hell on earth to me. Like, that
Yes.
Like I'd choose tough over hell on earth any day of the week. So it's so important to do the work and to fight your way through it, because you will come out stronger on the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would rather fight and work my ass off to continue healing versus living in the misery
Yep.
still having that thought process that, I was driving down the road and I wanted to run into a brick wall because I didn't want to
Yep.
be here. I
Yep.
never tried to commit suicide, but I had thoughts of it.
Yep.
And that was for 30 years I lived that way. And I would rather fight every single day doing what I am today, because to me it's hard, but it's not as hard as living in the pain and the misery that you live in, and the constant battle of you know
Is
today
this worth it?
tomorrow might have been that day that I decided I didn't never try it, but then there might have been a day that I might have tried it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Tracy, I really, really, really appreciate you being on the show and sharing your message with other people and sharing your story with us. If people want to connect with you online just to get to know you or learn more about your business, what's the best way people connect with you?
So you can reach me on Facebook at Tracy Reed, READ, or you can also reach me on Instagram at Tracy_Reed.
Beautiful. And I'll put those in the show notes so people can just click on them and go connect with you that way.
Okay. All right. Thank
Awesome. Well,
you. I enjoyed it.
thank you, Tracy. I really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate our friendship. And everybody out there that was listening, like I said, if you got any value out of this, which I'm sure you did, please share it with someone that you love that needs to hear the message, and let's make the world a better place. And we will see you on the battlefield.